Well, I know we all moan about the weather when it's like this, but sometimes it's good to feel the rain on your face, and it brings out the aromas in a garden, and also the plants that really love it damp, like these snake's head fritillaries, Fritillaria meleagris, with these checkered bells of white and dusky plum purple. This is their 4th year in this patch of damp grass on my slope, and they're really revelling in it. Mind you, for about 5 minutes I'm not. Come off into my shed. Well, I was going to plant some bog plants and marginal aquatics by my stream today, but quite frankly, it's so wet out there you could plant bog plants anywhere, so I've come inside instead to elevate my ideas. Hanging baskets. They are so incredibly popular nowadays. Everybody's got them. It used to be just pubs, but now it's all of us, and they are tremendous if you make them properly in the first place and remember to water them. Well, the first thing to look at is what you're going to use as a basket. There are some close weave plastic kinds, reed and willow hanging baskets, but this is a really sturdy steel plastic coated which allows you to plant in between these struts. What it does mean, of course, is that compost falls straight through. You've got to use a liner. Now, the traditional hanging basket liner was this, sphagnum moss, taken from bogs all over Britain. But it's a resource which needs to be conserved now, so I don't like using sphagnum moss to line hanging baskets, and neither is it the most efficient. We discovered in our trials last year here for Gardener's World that this was one of the best hanging basket liners. It's almost like carpet underlay. You can buy it specially cut now into hanging basket shape. It tucks in there. The little slits mean you can fold it so that it neatly fills that basket, and it works a treat. But the best liner of all was the old woolly jumper. So if you've got one and it's full of holes, use that to line your hanging basket, or if you present Gardener's World, rely on your viewers to make you special hanging basket liners. You better believe it, with these little holes that you can push your plants in through. So to the ladies who sent me these, I now know I have the best job on television. There we are, a woolly made-to-measure hanging basket liner which will take the compost and the plants. And this is the compost. Ordinary, multi-purpose, soilless compost. What it does need is a bit of care and attention to make sure it's well suited to being in a hanging basket. It needs to hang on to moisture, and the way to make sure it does that is to use this. Moisture retaining granules. Mix them in with the compost, and when it's watered they swell up like wallpaper paste, hanging on to moisture when otherwise the plants will be going dry. But they're in there for a long summer, which also means they're going to be hungry, and to feed them right the way through the year you can use these slow release fertiliser granules compounded into pellets, and you push them down into the basket in the compost. But I find that's too much concentration of fertiliser in any one spot, so I prefer to use the granules themselves. Just a sprinkling over the compost like that, and they will release their food right the way through the year. Now, a garden centre owner said to me last week, he said, please will you tell people about the fact that we use slow-release fertiliser granules in containers in the garden centre, because they keep bringing these container-grown plants back and complaining that there are slugs' eggs in the compost, and it's not. It's these slow-release pellets, so that's what it is if you're worried. They're as good in the pots as they are in hanging baskets. Bit of compost in the bottom, and then you can start feeding in your plants. What I want to do with this basket is to make it into a complete orb of ivy-leaved and trailing geraniums, pelargoniums. And this is a delicious variety called Evka, with leaves that are gently edged with creamy white and bright red feathery flowers. And they're going to be pushed in the sides through my little tailor-made holes from the outside in. Look at this. The lady who made this must even have known how big these plugs were. The great thing about standing your basket on a pot like this is that you can turn it round and make it easier to plant up each hole. And when you've done that first layer, you can then top up to my tailor-made second layer. And this is, believe it or not, my craft advisor tells me, stitched in moss stitch, which is rather appropriate, isn't it, for a hanging basket. And this second layer of holes, which has been beautifully alternately spaced from the bottom ones, means that my next layer can go in there. Bit of a squeeze, but No bother. And then in the top, I'm going to plant the fanflower scaevola, because I love it. 5 of them. One in the middle, that should do nicely. Now when you've watered this in, don't put it straight outdoors. It wants to go in a porch or a cool greenhouse for about a month, so that at the end of May, when all danger of frost is past, it can be planted out and it'll grow away freely. Good that, eh? But what price plants? How much would you give me for that hanging basket? Not as much as you might have given me way back in the 17th century for a single tulip bulb. They changed hands for prices the equivalent of a house or a coach and four. So Stanley Killiingback in those days would have been a rich man.
I've lived in this house now for 54 years. I was in the Navy during the war, and I bought this house immediately I was decommissioned. I planted my first tulips the same year I came in, 1946. Of course, in the early days, I was extremely poor and couldn't buy very many, so quite a lot of the early tulips I bought were simply because they were the cheapest available.
And how many do you think you've got now then?
In the garden and in pots and in containers and everything, it's over 15,000. Actually, in the ground, there's over 14,000.
And how many different varieties would you say are in?
372.
Exactly, to be precise, yeah.
Well, that's because my son puts them in alphabetical order for me after drawing up my plan.
OK, now, Stanley, I'm going to have to go and find these tulips. Which are your favourite ones?
Well, I have several favourites. I think my total favourite is called Tender Beauty.
On with Stanley's plan here. Let's see if we can make sense of this garden. Right, let's start with his favourite, Tender Beauty, row C1. OK, N3, N4. No, it's not along here. Must be down here somewhere. C1, C2, C1. Here we go. Now, which one of these is it? It's down the bottom, which means it's nearest the path here. It's this one here. Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous, isn't it?
When I first grew it, something like 40 years ago, it cost £2 a bulb. And £2 40 years ago was real money.
Yeah, a lot of money, isn't it? Yeah.
So I only bought 2 of them. This year, I bought 50 of them for, I think, about for 35 quid for 50.
You'd never quite believe how many different colours there are in this small garden. I mean, this one, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's that deep, voluptuous purple that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I've noticed in the garden it's all quite regimented. Do you think it's something to do with your naval background that,
No,
that everything's so ordered?
No, it's entirely a question of getting the most possible number into the garden.
Now, this is what I call a tulip. This is like a classic tulip. It's upright, it's bold, it's got a strong colour, it's got a really strong form. It's absolutely gorgeous. This one's called Lefebur's Memory, and it's one of the Darwin hybrids. And it's also nice to see it against the wheelbarrow there in the background. It's nice to know that not everything in the garden is absolutely perfectly regimented in straight lines anyway.
Just going back into your naval days, did you see any fantastic gardens or plants on your travels?
No, only a lot of water.
And what length of season do you get out of the tulips, as far as flowering?
The first tulip flowers in the garden are normally in January. Occasionally it's February, but normally January. And there's always something still showing colour in June.
Wow, from January to June you've got colour in your garden.
That's right.
And it's amazing. And the variety of colours in tulips is just staggering, isn't it?
Well, I think it's just a mass of brilliant colours in nice shapes, varying shapes, different kinds and sorts. They look beautiful every day. Rain, sun, shine. Even in fog they shine through.
Denman's is the home of our most influential garden designer, John Brookes. Based here in Sussex, he designs gardens all over the world, from Chile to Japan, working in a garden begun by the late Joyce Robinson in 1945, but which he's been developing for the past 18 years. Long before the present flurry of interest in design, he was more or less a lone voice, urging us all to think of more than plants when we plan our gardens, and instead of always looking for inspiration to the past, to take on board the lessons of modern art and architecture, of which his own garden is a product. An essay in abstract shape and form, allied to a strong sense of place.
I think we've become so sort of almost institutionalised in what we like and what we don't like, and I have to say it's something to do with the media, that increasingly I think people want to get in touch much more with where they are. And in terms of the garden, it's to do with vernacular and the local idiom, the local soil, and the plants it produces. It's a sort of organic garden, and public come and they say they're not overwhelmed because of its sort of grandness and formality.
And what you've got is a dry, meadowy site below the downs.
That's right, we're off the chalk, and we've got this very gravelly soil that dries out in summer, and we use it for our footpaths and just as a general medium to plant things in that like it fairly dry in summer. This is a dry gravel stream, as you see, wanders down to a pool. Don't get your feet wet. I use these big curving shapes with areas of mown grass and rougher grass. That gets cut once a month, and this perhaps once a week. And then the dry gravel stream flows on down and ends in this pond at the bottom. I think it's terribly important that the garden has a fullness and a greenness in winter. So I use a lot of evergreen, evergrey, and I sort of zigzag that about, and then use contrasting other more deciduous, lower shrubby forms through that, and then I put in the perennials and the bulbs.
Right. You do subdivide the spaces, don't you, John? But it's not in a very obvious way.
No, I like to create sort of incidents as one goes round, and to a degree they sort of punctuate and make little spaces of their own. There's an urn here, and I'm thinking of the shape of that urn against the shape of that astelia with those grey things behind. In sort of my mind's eye, I'm thinking in vertical forms and round forms and horizontal forms,
Right.
and then sort of putting it into plan.
Right. And then colour comes in as a wash.
Evergreen comes in first, then texture, and the bonus is the colour on top of it.
It's very easy when daffodils go out of flower to forget about them, ignore them, and oh, they're a bit untidy, let's cut them down. Well, you don't do that, and neither do you knot the foliage or put it into elastic bands just to tidy things up. This is not a sock drawer, it's a garden, and I want these to flower well next year as well. So what do? First of all, get rid of these faded flower heads. If you pinch there, that means you've pinched off below the ovary, which is where the seeds would form. You're saving the plant's energy, and any that have gone faded can just be nipped off like that, but the stalk can remain. To give them even more energy, you can give them a feed in the form of a general fertiliser like blood, fish and bone, which contains all the main plant nutrients. Just sprinkle it at the rate of a couple of handfuls to each clump, right down below on the surface of the soil. And then, with a little cultivator or a hand fork, just work it in. And very quickly, the rain will wash it down to where it's going to do some good. What else do? You ignore them for 6 weeks to allow all the nutrition in the soil and in the leaf to go back down to the bulb and make the flowers for next year. Then you can chop off the foliage. But there are other problems with daffodils. Sometimes you find them growing in the wrong place. When I first planted them, they weren't in the wrong place. But then this arbutus grew, and now they're swamped underneath. Not flowering terribly well, and when they do, they're born to blush unseen. So it's time to dig them up, get them out to somewhere where I can really enjoy them. That means pushing a fork down in by the roots, making sure I get bulbs, not just stalks. Prise away, and keep your fingers crossed. If you ever wondered if I practice what I preach and really do put my daffodil bulbs as deep as I always tell you to, which is 6 or 8 inches, so they don't dry out in summer and then not flower, you know now that I do. I need a miner's lamp, really. There we are. Up they come. Could have been embarrassing, couldn't it, if I hadn't got them? One great consolation for you when you're working out among your daffs in this kind of filthy weather is that yet another reason why they don't flower well in a succeeding year is that they've had a very dry spring. I think, ladies and gentlemen, oh, I'll do them for you later, that's very unlikely this year, don't you? I'm going to replant them now over here, and there is a way of replanting that makes sure again that they grow fat and multiply in succeeding years. You could say, what on earth is interesting about digging a hole? I'd be forced to agree with you. But what this will do, I hope, is demonstrate to you how deep the hole needs to be and just how you're going to replant those bulbs. Now, you could just bung them in the hole and plant them like that, but they very quickly become overcrowded. It's much better to tease apart these clumps into individual bulbs and to plant those individuals 2 or 3 inches apart to let them grow and develop over the next few years and produce far more flowers over a longer period of time. And then I can fill in around them with the soil, and it's now you can see the real depth of the hole, and that there is indeed an entire hand span between the base of the bulb and the new surface of the soil, and that's vital to keep daffodils in good heart. Then you can ease that soil back in and firm it with your fingers around them. Whip the faded flower heads off these, and again give them a feed. By next year you'll hopefully hardly notice they've moved. You see, we garden on this programme come rain or shine, and now it's the turn of Rachel de Thame, whose once neglected garden in Birmingham is beginning to take shape.
A few weeks ago, this part of the garden was a complete mess. What it really lends itself to is becoming a shady woodland retreat. Now, I've already dug over the soil, which was riddled with bindweed roots. It also had a lot of ash in it from old bonfires, which I've dug in because it'll make a good plant food.
To grow plants that enjoy shady conditions, we have to make the soil more hospitable. That is, give it a few years of leaf mould that it would have got in a woodland. I'm digging in the next best thing, which is composted bark.
I have to confess that after all the hard work of clearing, moving and weeding, I really needed a bit of retail therapy. And the starting point for any shady garden must be a great looking tree. Now, because this is going to be the focus of the garden, it's really important to get it placed first. A tree's got to provide excellent all-year value, and this one should be perfect. It's a Crataegus persimilis prunifolia. It's a member of the hawthorn family. It's got lovely white blossom in the spring. In the autumn, the leaves go beautiful shades of rich orange and red. And to top it off, there are lovely scarlet berries as well. It's one of my favourite trees. Dig a nice generous hole for it, and then I'm going to put some of this composted bark into the hole and just fork it over, together with a handful of bloodfish and bone. This is Acer palmatum garnet. It's got these beautiful filigree lacy leaves, and it's going to grow slowly to about 2 metres high. But do make sure that you put it somewhere fairly sheltered, because these young leaves can easily be damaged by a late frost or high winds. Well, I know these aren't ideal planting conditions, but at least I'm not going to have to worry too much about watering it in. Now the fun bit, because I'm going to position all those lovely plants. I've already raided this garden and found some plants for shade. There were lots of bluebells coming through, and I found Euphorbia robii, which are invaluable for growing in dry shade. This white form of bleeding heart, which is Dicentra spectabilis alba, has these wonderful stems with dripping flowers and beautiful foliage, and it'll look lovely just under our little tree. That's ideal because it means it'll get plenty of light in the spring when it's coming into flower before the tree comes into leaf. Corydalis thrives in cool soil and has the most delicate of spurred sky blue flowers over tufts of ferny leaves, and it needs to be planted in a drift for best effect. Well, it may not look much at the moment, but Alchemilla mollis is such a good plant. In the summer it'll be covered in a froth of flowers, and the leaves are softly hairy, and they look wonderful when they trap little droplets of water on them and twinkle. Aquilegias, Granny's bonnets, are real old-fashioned cottage garden favourites. They'll seed around all over the place. And on this side of the garden, which is a little bit more sunny, they'll be really happy. And so am I with my bargain buy. These were just $3.99 down the road. And I think they're going to make a really nice edging for this area. Finishes it off a treat. Next time, I am going to be rebuilding those steps, and weather permitting, I might even get round to a small patio.
Whatever the weather this weekend, enjoy your garden. Ta-da.
There's more practical advice and inspirational ideas on the way next here on UKTV Gardens as we head into the ever-popular gardener's world. So stay with us.